On Inauguration Day,
the 4 years ahead
seems like an eternity.
It's not.
Because the left has engineered our government and institutions
to reject conservative ideology. The 2025 Presidential Transition Project
brings together over 60 conservative organizations
to ensure the policy and personnel are in place.
On January 20th, 2025.
Using 4 pillars,
we are laying the foundation
for the next president
to end Washington's bureaucracy and restore American prosperity.
Well, there you go. Welcome back to Free Thought Matters. We're continuing our conversation with longtime friend of Free Thought Matters, Representative Jared Huffman, about his Project 2025 Task Force, Stop Project 2025 Task Force. We just played an intentionally vague propaganda video that the Heritage Foundation has made about Project 2025. And Representative Huffman, what's wrong with that depiction they just gave?
Well, it's happy talk, and there's nothing happy about Project 2025. This is dark dystopia. This is a blueprint, essentially, for Donald Trump, especially now that he's cloaked with absolute immunity from the Supreme Court supermajority that he created, to go from being an aspiring dictator to a real one. And that's no exaggeration. That's what this really is. So the video that they don't want you to see is all the videos where they're out there bragging about how completely intertwined this effort is with Donald Trump and with his campaign and with the folks that are going to populate a second Trump presidency. Lately, they've begun to figure out just how unpopular Project 2025 is. And so they're starting to run from that entanglement with Trump and the Trump campaign. Donald Trump's trying to disown this thing. But you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I mean, they've literally spent the last year making sure the whole world knows how closely they're working together.
Thank you. So I don't need to tell anyone how dangerous Project 2025 is, or what it would do to the separation of church and state, or the rights of the secular Americans. If you're already here, you know what that means. I'm Mark Dann. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs with FFRF. I'm FFRF's eyes, ears, and voice in Washington, D.C. And I also work with our action fund, the FFRF Action Fund, which is what we are bringing with you today. That clip is from a great episode you may have seen with Free Thought Matters with Dan and Annie Laurie, and our special guest, Congressman Jared Huffman from California, who's the co-chair of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. So today, I'm going to talk with you how we've been able to use the FFRF Action Fund and how we've been able to use it very effectively to go up against Project 2025 and Christian nationalism. And I want to thank Annie Laurie Gaylor, Jocelyn Williamson, and Lisa Strand, some of our fantastic board members who keep moving forward the Action Fund. So Annie Laurie, Jocelyn, and Lisa, thank you so much for all of your efforts. And as Dan and Annie Laurie talked earlier today, we've been sounding the alarm on Project 25 since last year, long before it became a headline. And a key part of that has been the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, which has been instrumental to the congressional defense against Project 25. The loudest voices opposing Project 2025 are Congressional Free Thought Caucus members. And an free thinker, Representative Jared Huffman from California, who you saw earlier, is leading the charge against Project 2025 in Congress. Without the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, which you all helped to build, there would not be a Stop Project 2025 task force. And here's a clip with Representative Huffman leading the charge on the House floor against Project 2025 last week. He's joined by another member of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, Becca Balint from Vermont. Bruce?
Thank you. I thank the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, and as I prepare to yield to the gentlelady from Vermont, I will just observe that my colleagues' comments caused me to think about the fact that we're gathered here on what our Republican friends have dubbed Anti-Woke Week. Nothing is more Project 2025 than demagoguing and using wokeness as a pretext to try to roll back individual freedoms and civil rights and take away decades of progress. Our Republican colleagues can't seem to figure out how to fund the government and do the basics of governing, but they sure are good at finding time to demagogue on wokeness, and here we are. So with that, I'll yield to the gentlelady from Vermont, Representative Balin.
Thank you so much. Thank you for convening us to discuss this very important topic. You know, when I was in leadership in the Vermont State Senate, I saw the writing on the wall. I knew that Republicans were absolutely determined to overturn Roe v. Wade. We knew it was time to act to codify reproductive rights, not just in statute, but in our state's constitution. And at the time, some colleagues said I was overreacting. They said I was being paranoid, that I was being hysterical. They said the Supreme Court would never overturn Roe v. Wade because it was settled law. I can tell you it was not at all satisfying to be right. But in fact, overturning Roe v. Wade was just the beginning. The GOP is preparing for a possible second Trump term with a plan to end all access to abortion and contraception, all spelled out in the playbook, Project 2025. Trump's Project 2025 lays out plans to purposely misinterpret an outdated law known as the Comstock Act and use it to ban mailing drugs in medication abortions and any equipment or any materials used in surgical abortions. They even want to make it illegal to mail any information, period, about abortion.
So that's your work being done on the House floor, and that is our work together moving forward Congress. And that's something that we can all be proud of. Since I've been here, a big part of our efforts has been to increase FFRF's presence on the Hill, clout on the Hill, and we are doing that with FFRF and the Action Fund, and mostly thanks to your votes, your calling, your letter writing, and just being active. So we're seeing results to move forward our legislative agenda. And one of the key elements of stopping Project 2025 and standing up to Christian nationalism is to strengthen and build the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. And we did that with our first annual Congressional Reason reception. And I think you're going to recognize one of our key speakers with that, and who presented to several members of Congress and key staff members.
So I am pleased to announce that the Congressional Free Thought Caucus has one more award to bestow. The 2024 Award for Uncommon Nonsense recognizes the person who most violated church-state separation and betrayed the legacy of Thomas Paine. This year, it goes to a man who has said that God put him in the job to which American citizens elected him, that his position on every issue can be found in the Bible, that America is a Christian nation, and that separation of church and state is a misnomer. Believe it or not, this man had strong competition. Governors Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis, you've done impressive work. Oklahoma Superintendent of Schools Ryan Walters, I salute your efforts. But in a crowded field that includes Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice Tom Parker, with an opinion citing God 40 times, there's still a clear winner. The man who said that every Christian should seek to bring industry, government, and society as whole under the sway of the principles of righteousness, my Speaker of the House and yours, Congressman Mike Johnson.
So one of the things that's great about that event is, first, and this is all online, you can see this, is Kate Cohen is really fantastic. And what you can see from her full remarks, she says atheist to a number of members of Congress and their staffers several times. It was probably a Hill record. So nice job, Kate Cohen. And the reason we had it was May 4th, so May the 4th for all you Star Wars fans, for our annual Congressional Reason reception. and it's going to get bigger and bigger. And I also want to thank our friends at the Secular Coalition for America with Stephen Everett, who helped put it on, plus our friends at AHA. And then also, it's helping to, again, give more notoriety, getting the Congressional Free Thought Caucus moving forward on issues and helping them reach new audiences. And then the big thing about this event, and you can see this in Kate's remarks, is long before the Harris campaign recognized the power of joy and humor in handling pretty serious issues, we knew we had that covered. That's our superpower, and that's our strength. And we didn't hold back at this event. So look for this event to be a regular event on the Hill, and very soon, this is a promise we can actually make in DC, it's going to rival and surpass the National Day of Prayer. And there's a lot more we're able to do this year because of your support in the Action Fund. So you can ask us during the break and during coffee hour, and thanks to Dan and Annie Laurie, we were able to have focus groups on non-religious youth voters in Wisconsin, and how we learned how youth voters are going to make their voices heard. And this slide is from some of the readout, and you can find this all on the Action Fund website. And we're also investing in protecting abortion through a direct investment in state abortion referendums this fall, including a major investment right here in Colorado. And definitely ask us about our fully functioning dynamic scorecard, thanks to Caitlin Beret, our program assistant, Ryan Jayne, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, as well as Ryan Dudley, is a fully operational scorecard that's dynamic. It changes as votes come in, as co-sponsorships come in, to let you know who are the true champions of the separation of church and state and who could use a little bit of work. And definitely ask us how we're holding the Supreme Court accountable, especially Thomas and Alito. And during the break, definitely ask us, should the worst scenario happen, how we're going to be prepared to go up against 2025, where we're going to use our resources, and how we can start to claim victories as well. We're prepared and ready to go should the unthinkable happen. And during the break, also, ask us about Thomas Paine. This is a great legislative victory. Or better yet, ask Margaret Downey about Thomas Paine. And we were able to, through some really cool maneuvering, we're going to get Thomas Paine placed a lot closer to the National Mall than we thought. It's a great development. So definitely ask Margaret about that. And definitely ask our next speaker, Ryan Jayne, about how we're going to be able to use new technology to give more assistance to school boards, especially when they're under attack from Moms for Liberty. So, Ryan?
Thank you, Mark, and hello, everybody. So I am Ryan Jayne, I'm Senior Policy Counsel, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the state legislative session that is coming to an end in 48 of our 50 states. If people want to know, the two oddballs are New Jersey and Virginia. For some reason, they begin their legislative sessions in odd years, so they are at the halfway point. But everybody else, we are at a spot where we can reflect a little bit on what we've accomplished this year and what our plans are for next year. And I'm coming up on 10 years at FFRF, and it makes me reflect and remember that even though the staff gets so much of the credit, you have to keep in mind that we are not FFRF. You all are FFRF, and all the rest of the members we have. We could not do any of the advocacy that we do without you. So thank you so much for all that you all do. Now, in terms of this most recent legislative session, I want to go over some of what we were able to accomplish. First of all, we sent about 300 different action alerts, opportunities for people to contact their elected representatives and tell them to stand up for state church separation, either by supporting good bills, opposing bad bills, or taking some other sort of action. And I want to give a special shout out specifically to Greg Fletcher, who actually builds most of these actual action alerts and has become incredibly efficient at it. So one of our many unsung heroes is absolutely Greg. We have sent more than 180,000 emails over the past 2 years during this legislative session. And then also, what are even more effective than emails are phone calls. So in addition to the emails, we've also sent more than 600 phone calls. So this is a huge testament to how much has been accomplished by all of you taking action. And overall, there were more than 18,000 people who took action. So a huge thank you, and I'd appreciate one more round of applause for all of our advocates at the C4. Now, those of you hopefully in this room are well acquainted with what I'm talking about, how our action alerts work, but if you're not, our Action Center at ffrfaction.org is where all of this magic happens. So if you haven't signed up before, please go to the website, and then under the Take Action tab, you click on Action Center, and this is what you'll see. And it makes things as simple as they can possibly be, where the system knows where you live, knows who your representatives are, and when you get the opportunity to take action, you'll get an email or a text message that says, here's what you can do. We tell you what's going on, pre-write a message for you. If you want to, you can just click and send it, or of course, you can go in, customize it, add your own personal touch to it. And this is a tremendously effective way to be involved with minimal effort, minimal time. So this is absolutely something that's going to continue to be a top priority. Now, that's how we have done what we've done, but in terms of what we've done, what the substance of all these action alerts, the first thing I'm going to talk about is public schools. So this is, of course, a perennial issue that you heard all about with our legal work, and it's no different with state legislation. We have all sorts of different areas involving state-church separation in public schools, and unfortunately, we are playing defense with a lot of these. So the first issue is, of course, you have to think about public school chaplains, which is a bizarre phrase to even be saying, but unfortunately, 3 states have, this session over the last 2 years, have passed public school chaplain bills. And you can see on this map other states that have considered it, and I'm sad to report that I could pretty much guarantee this map is going to be broader next session, as other states like to copy the bad ideas of the states in front of you. The next topic to think about is release time education. So for those who don't know, this has been a topic for decades where public school students are allowed to leave the public school day for private religious instruction off campus. And the Supreme Court has looked at this and said this is legal if school districts want to allow it, but they don't have to. So in most states, that is the current rule, is it's up to school districts whether they want to have a release time program or not. The current trend is for states to mandate release time, to tell school districts you must allow students to miss public school time to attend religious instruction. And these are the states where we have seen that legislation pass this session, and again, I expect this to be proliferating next year as well. And then finally, and I think most severely, we have to talk briefly about private school vouchers, which to my mind is the single greatest threat to state-church separation in this country today. It's tremendous amounts of taxpayer money being funneled from its intended destination, which is public secular schools, and instead going effectively directly into the bank accounts of churches and private religious schools. The trend right now is to introduce new voucher programs in states that don't have them, and to expand existing voucher programs to make them universal, meaning even the wealthiest families that already send all their kids to private schools will now have those tuitions picked up by taxpayers. And this, if that's not alarming to you, it absolutely should be, and it absolutely undermines the argument that has always been behind vouchers, which is this phony idea of school choice. So it sounds very good, it's kind of attractive, and there are a lot of well-meaning people who supported the idea of school choice, but this really shows you just how fake that is. Once they get access to taxpayer funds. They don't want to give people choice. They want to give churches taxpayer dollars and force taxpayers to fund religious education. So brace yourself. Here comes the voucher map. Here are the states where we saw bills that were attempting to expand private school vouchers. So you can see it is a lot. Now, some good news. We are not just playing defense. And what I'm going to talk about very briefly next are some of the proactive measures we were able to take this year. There's plenty of bad bills that we could spend all of our time on, but we like to try to also make things better instead of just making things not worse. So the next topic I want to talk about very briefly is secular recovery. So this is a set of bills that will try to ensure that people are not coerced by a government court system into a religious 12-step style program, which we've seen pop up all over the country. The meetings are everywhere, but I mean the coercive aspect we've seen pop up in many different places. So we've supported bills in New York and Minnesota about this. We also were instrumental in getting a bill introduced in Michigan this session that had a new hearing that went very well. It was a popular bill. This is always going to be a multi-year cycle, so we are going to be hitting the ground running next session to hopefully get some of these bills across the finish line. Now, the next thing I want to chat on is healthcare sharing ministries. For those who don't know, this is basically fake insurance that uses religion in order to get into a exemption of the Affordable Care Act, where they don't have the same guardrails that ordinary health insurance has. And unfortunately, they are often able to dupe people into paying a great deal of money and then not realizing they don't have good coverage because of the religious justification. So we've been working both federally and also at the state level in order to try to rein in the abuses of healthcare sharing ministries. This session, we got 4 different bills of that sort introduced in Arizona, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Missouri. Child marriage is another issue that I'm happy to say is quickly being defeated across the country. We are seeing great success in removing child marriage, making it so that marriage only is possible 18 and older with no exceptions. This session, we have seen child marriage be banned in Connecticut, Michigan, New Hampshire, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. So congratulations for everyone who helped partake in that. There's also a federal bill having to do with banning child marriage that Senator Dick Durbin introduced, and we're working with. That bill needs a little bit of work, but we're hoping we can turn it into the ideal bill, and then we could solve this all at once if we can get Congress to pass the bill, which good luck with that, but we'll do what we can. Now, the final thing I want to talk about, a different topic that we've seen success with this session is medical aid in dying. This is, of course, an issue that we've been working on for a long time. We're going to continue focusing on it. There are a number of states where these bills are moving. The idea is to give people some control back to their end of life once they've received a terminal diagnosis. And we're in particular looking forward to trying to get these bills advanced in Illinois, Michigan, and a few other states. But this is another issue that's on the top of our priority. And to speak next about other upcoming priorities is Ryan Dudley, who is our state policy manager, and he's going to talk more about what you can look forward to in the next legislative session. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Okay, so before I get to what we're looking forward to for the next legislative session, I want to go ahead and talk about some cool things that I think have kind of happened over this last year. And certainly one of the coolest things I think has happened over this last year is that we have become recognized by elected officials throughout the country and other advocacy groups, like-minded advocacy groups, as go-to professionals, subject matter experts that they can turn to on any secular issues. Here we are in the Wisconsin State Capitol, and through our advocacy efforts in Wisconsin, we have found ourselves on the list of governor's allies who he calls upon to show up to bill signings, bill veto signings, just kind of as a show of support. So the picture on your left is Ryan Jayne, and then Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, our former legal fellow Kat Grant, and myself at a bill veto session. We was vetoing an anti-trans bill at this particular veto ceremony. And then the picture on your right, you can see me and Ryan Jayne back in the back there. We are with a number of other advocates at a bill signing ceremony. So it's really a nice thing to have a friend in the governor of your home state. So we're really thankful that we found ourselves on that list. And one of the reasons we found ourselves on that list is because we're putting ourselves out there as a subject matter experts on a lot of issues. What I'm going to show you now is just a few of our clips, headlines that we have made through op-eds that have gotten published throughout the country. This is by no means exhaustive. We've had reporters call us, ask us for our expertise on legislative bills, our input that has gotten published in a number of articles. But this kind of gives you an idea of how we're getting our name out there, what we're talking about, and that people are paying attention. So first, you could see that Chris Line wrote on how Christian nationalism kind of permeated at the RNC in Milwaukee. A Texas newspaper published my op-ed calling out Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton for blocking life-saving abortion measures for Kate Cox. I'm sure you all heard of that one. And then Ryan Jayne, who you just heard spoke, has published a number of op-eds throughout the country. These two that I highlighted here are how he's talking about how public school chaplain bills are a direct threat to the separation of state and church. Here, he calls out the Catholic Church for filing bankruptcy right after they were forced to basically reopen investigations into clergy abuse. And lastly, we're back to Project 2025. Ryan writes about how Project 2025 is an imminent and major threat to our secular rights. And like I said, these are just some of our headlines that we've made throughout the year. Like I said, no means exhaustive, but it's just an example of how we're putting ourselves out there. As I mentioned earlier, a number of allied groups have called on us to show up, to speak, to offer our opinions on issues that threaten secular democracy, and we've been able to, throughout this year, show up, present, and be the face of FFRF and the Action Fund. In this picture here, you can see Ryan, he's on your far left. This is after he spoke to the upstate New York chapter, a newly formed chapter, on which he presented issues threatening secular democracy in New York. And not only is Ryan a state church expert, he's also an accomplished pianist and a vocalist. So he got to perform from there. He still hasn't shown us the video of it, so if any central New York people or upstate New York people have that video, we'd like to see that. So. Next, I was invited to go speak at the Iowa Secular Summit by the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers. Here I am talking about the threat that Project 2025 poses to our secular democracy. This is me, Kat Grant, and myself at the Secular Student Alliance Conference in Little Rock. We were asked to speak on LGBTQ issues and how they kind of show themselves through legislation. I couldn't find a picture of us presenting, but I promised that we did. We're just here tabling right here. And then lastly, I had a really cool experience where I got to drive down to Chicago to go to the DNC. And while I was there, I got to screen the film Bad Faith. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you find a screening for that. It's fantastic. And I got to talk to other secular legislators and just other legislators in general about our issues and kind of converse with some like-minded allied groups. This is me and Isabella Russian from AHA. And as Ryan promised, I talked about what we would be looking forward to this upcoming legislative session. As you've heard, now that we're a C4, we're no longer just playing defense, which is a fantastic thing. One of the state legislative priorities this year will be tackling medical neglect exemptions. A number of states have these exemptions, these child medical neglect exemptions, in which parents can escape criminal culpability if they just claim to pray over their child instead of seeking medical attention, no matter if their child dies, has long-term illness or something like that. If a secular individual does that, they're getting charged. This might be a little bit in the weeds, but one thing we're really looking forward to, and you heard a little bit about this earlier, is our school board advocacy. We're taking on Moms for Liberty head on, and in order to do that, yeah, right? To that end, we are adding a school board tracking monitoring system to our legislative monitoring, which means really nothing to you. But what I'm saying is, or what I'm here to tell you, is that we've talked to a number of school board advocacy groups throughout the country who are ecstatic for this, ecstatic for us to have this, and we are ecstatic to be seen as, yet again, another subject matter expert in promoting secular democracy within the school board arena. So that's all I have. We're really excited, and I hope you are too. We're playing offense. We're getting in there, and we're doing a lot of good things. And we thank you very much.